Joining us now, Dennis Tajer. He is the communications committee chair captain for the Allied Pilots Association. Dennis, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Tell us about give us like some of the stats on the Allied Pilot Association. I know, like within, it seems to me, the airline industry, there are multiple pilot associations / unions for different airlines. Is that the way it works?
That's true. And let's cut to the chase. We're unions. APA, the Allied Pilots Association, is an independent union, although we work closely with ALPA, the Airline Pilot Association. They're an affiliated union, and they represent, we're American Airlines, mainline ops. They represent Delta, United, FedEx, and a myriad of other regional affiliates. And then there's independent unions at Southwest Airlines, SWAPA. I say these very quickly because we work with those unions frequently, particularly during what we'll call pattern negotiations, which is happening right now.
Well, right. Sorry. Go.
No, it's okay. I mean, I was curious, though, what the numbers are, though, for percentages of commercial pilots. I was saying to Sam before the show, my uncle's a member of ALPA. He's a United pilot. What percentage of commercial pilots are unionized, and how many of them do fall under kind of your jurisdiction?
Yeah, well, we have 15,000 pilots in American Airlines. It's all the mainline ops. I think ALPA represents in the aggregate some over 60,000 pilots. So in the U.S., it's a rare event to not have pilots under the blanket of union representation. And I'll tell you, that started years ago. As your uncle flying for United may be aware of this. There's a legacy that's of unions in the pilot world because of safety. Years ago, and we see this happening from time to time with those smaller ops that don't have unions. They come up and they say, Captain Tajer, what's the problem? Well, the airplane's not safe or the weather's not safe. And they go, great, we disagree. If you're not going to fly it, you're fired. I've got somebody else to do the work. So that was the birth of unions. And of course, work rules, which can support safety, and then just compensation. As we see now in modern day aviation, it's deep into six figures just to get the certificates, let alone the experience. So having compensation that meets that level of training and dedication, the many years it takes, sometimes takes a collective voice.
I have to say, I would be terrified to get on a plane without a union pilot, because I mean, just from that dynamic that you've described there, the last thing you want is a pilot who is worried about how am I going to put food on the table, how am I going to pay for the healthcare for my kids, or whatever it is, because I'm complaining about the safety of the aircraft. I mean, that is not the situation you want to be in. So. APA represents 15,000 American airline pilots. I want to talk about what happened with Delta, and I want to talk about Southwest. But I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, you guys took a vote. This is a very unified union in terms of this vote. Give us the numbers on that vote in terms of the strike authorization.
Yeah, it was a very successful authorization vote. We had 96% of our pilots voted, and over 99% of them voted in the affirmative to authorize our leadership to initiate a strike. We've seen that at Delta before they got their deal. Southwest pilots, last week, Monday, we had a national picket event for our union on the back of or on the news of the strike authorization, and the turnout for it was beyond our wildest dreams. We're still seeing media articles covering it. I just read one from the Cambodian Times. Think about that, covering a union issue in the U.S. So the Southwest pilots are starting their authorization vote as we speak. So, this is actually a good sign. It puts a lot of uncertainty in things, and we'll get to how the Railway Labor Act works. But this means that deals that must happen to serve our passengers and to maintain or to reestablish reliability. We've seen the airlines properly take the heat for not being prepared for the recovery after $54 billion was invested, not only to keep employees on the property and trained, but also to keep the equipment rolling. They didn't do any of that. So when the recovery came in strong, they turned to the frontline workers and said, guess what? You're going to do more with less. So metaphors abound, but they said batter up, and they handed us a hockey stick. And that's what we're trying to correct right now through our negotiations. And we've got solutions. But what we're assured of is that we cannot have a repeat of what happened last summer and the summer before. So management teams are going to have to step up and join us. And at Delta, they have a deal now. One of the biggest things in Delta wasn't just the recovery of their compensation, which had been years since any increase in that, just as with us, but the world changed post-pandemic. And now workers are saying, hey, wait a minute, as a pilot, I can't fly remotely, but I know what my neighbor is doing, that professional that was trained and invested as much as I did. I need to have a work-life balance. And that's been a fundamental shift for us. And I've been at this 30 years. I have never seen such a large demographic of pilots say, hey, look, I know the money's coming, but I've got to have a life and a support system that enables me to take this on. And so that's really where we're at, as a crossroads, a pivot point. And management used to just say, well, we'll pay them and they'll show up. It's taken more than money. We know the money's there. So it's actually ironic, because American Airlines itself and other airlines have talked to that. They've actually said, our CEO, who we interact with frequently, right on up to yesterday, our president met with him. He said, I've got like 30 to 50 airplanes, told Wall Street this, that I can't utilize because I don't have the assets in place. Think of that capital, hundreds of millions of dollars. They don't have the workers to get it done, and particularly the pilots. And the good news is we have answers for them and we have solutions. But every day that they waste talking to Wall Street and don't talk to us to get it settled is another airplane that's not flying. And ultimately ticket prices go up because the supply is not out there. I'm digressing, but this is so connected. Yeah. And the union effort, not only for safety, but to actually produce a company that is producing even more profits, is most importantly reliable to the consumer. Man, this is just one stage, and we're all on that stage. And right now, the world's watching.
And just to be clear, you know what it sounds like what you're talking about, and we're seeing this like in different retail, fights, and workers having to be on call for a certain period of time and not necessarily getting credit. I mean, the dynamics obviously with piloting is somewhat different, but it really is about scheduling and how flights go back and forth, I would imagine, and where pilots are going to be stationed and their relationship to those flights. And if I hear what you're saying is that you guys have ideas about how to do that. It may involve hiring some more pilots or not necessarily, but that the airline is trying to do it in a way that's going to maximize their profits, but they haven't. There were 4%, I think it was last year, of flights that were canceled because they couldn't figure this out. Are they doing it because they have some calculation where Wall Street wants a certain I don't know, cost
lack
to
of
profit ratio,
right?
Or
yeah.
lack of redundancy. I mean, are we seeing a play out? I mean, you mentioned the Railway Labor Act, which just because of cross-country transportation includes airlines. It's a very old bill, and it limits the ability of pilots to strike in the same way that in some ways railway workers did.
Yes.
But what we saw with the Railway Act was these transit companies coming in, trying to diminish the number of railway workers they employ. They'll give them more money, but they'll put them through hell. They won't even let them have sick days because somebody from McKinsey or whoever it was said, this is the way that you're going to cut down on your thing. It increases lack of safety for the general communities that these trains go through. Are we seeing a similar dynamic play out here?
Exactly. And, you hit on all the points. I'm smiling because of out of enthusiasm for, you don't have to be an expert in the industry to see what's going on. And here's the irony. It isn't so much for saying, hey, you need to hire more pilots. You're underutilizing us. You're recklessly utilizing us, pushing us to the maximums. We have legal limits and then human limits where we fatigue out. And you're saying, well, I'll just hire more pilots. you're actually costing the enterprise more money to run the operation than if you ran it rationally and worked with us. You mentioned sick call. This is the first time in 30 years at American, one of our singular issues in the tail end of this, which we hope is the tail end of negotiations, is our sick accrual and how we actually are charged it. It comes down to management has built trips now that are 4 and 5 days long. That's a long time away, and it's tough on our pilot families. But if a pilot calls in sick on one of those days, that amount of flying time will use up most of their sick time. So a pilot can actually have down to just 2 sick events per year before they're out of sick time. That's triggered by these longer trips. And here's another thing. We've actually got to get a hold of this. We've gone to management, and I call in sick on a 5-day trip. Then they take the whole 5-day trip, and now I'm sick on it, get charged for it. And some other pilot has to go out there and fly it. So I have to staff for that. We've said, how about this? I call in sick and I've got a 5-day trip. Maybe I'm good after 2 days and I can come back to work for those 3. I'd like to preserve my sick time and I can fly for you. And management says, yeah, we're not so interested in that. Are you kidding me? You're short on people, and I'm coming up with an idea that helps my family out, but also helps you with your staffing issue. A lot of words to say there.
Well, I mean, it sounds irrational to me, and you're saying it's irrational, but do you guys have any insight as to why they're doing it? Is it just sheer hubris, or is it that there's somebody who has a calculation that says, if we do it XYZ, it will look better to Wall Street. The stock will go up. My options are worth more, and that what we're really seeing is not necessarily a C-suite that is interested in the most efficient way of managing this for the sake of the airline, on time and for non-cancellations, and certainly not in the interest of the people working there, but are in the interest of me as an individual with my stock options and how Wall Street's going to react to the type of numbers they see.
That's a great point. And I actually am the chairman of our investor relations committee. Airline pilot unions actually go to Wall Street. We go to the analysts and we talk about issues that matter to them. And the one that you just hit, are they worried about the bottom line? They should be, but here's the idea. They're actually wasting the asset that they have. That example that I gave you, and we have a myriad of others. We go to the investors, the institutional investors that own over half of American Airlines, and saying, here's where our ideas would actually improve the margin. And we talk in that language because the numbers check. And I think the reason management is just not ready to engage in it is they're afraid. They're afraid to trust the pilot that they will come to work to ease their sick usage. We don't know. They have not verbalized it, saying, no, we like the way it is. Are you kidding me? You like the way it is? The way it is in this issue is underperforming its potential. So
is it the precedent? Is it the precedent that they don't want to set to give pilots and labor more power and agency over their own employment in this way?
Yeah, that you're hitting. I'll hit the buzzword. While they laud entrepreneurship out there in the free market, when it comes to unions saying, look, this is, and I come from blue collar union family, but this is not your dad's union. This is a modern union that knows that if the company thrives and we're not exploited, and that's not done on our backs, we can broaden that margin. So they talk a lot about culture and about respect, but when it comes down to it, if you don't have the work rules that set that up, and you may have a CEO that talks a lot about it and does some of it, but those CEOs move along. I'm on my 6th CEO here at American Airlines. Right. And that core issue, that the buzzword we have is respect. If you're not respecting my schedule, chances are you're not respecting the passenger schedule, and you're sure as heck not respecting my family schedule. I go out on a trip. I'll go out on one in a couple days. It's a 2-day trip. I'll pack for 4. I don't know where I'm going to end up. I don't know what to tell my family. I hope I'm back for Mother's Day. But if things don't change in the way they operate that certainty of my schedule, thus our passenger schedules, is up in the air. And that's just not the way we've run this business. And that's why you're seeing across the industry, every pilot union is saying, look, I know the money's there. It's coming. but I need some level of work-life balance and scheduling practices that I can count on. We're professionals. We know that weather hits and sometimes we get an extra day out on the road. But when it's clear skies, as Secretary Buttigieg just said, clear sky cancellations and disruptions, that means somebody's not living up to the contract of carrying passengers, and that would be on management.
Is there a different, we mentioned like the C-suite culture, I guess, that really doesn't necessarily want to give up control, even when it's a more rational decision. Is there a change in the culture of the members in your union? I mean, are we seeing, 96% of the union voting 99% in favor? I mean, that's pretty lockstep. Are you noticing a change in the nature of like your union members? Are they more willing to engage in this type of militancy?
Well,
maybe that's not the right word, militancy.
Okay, I understand.
No, but yeah. I mean, are they willing to
yeah.
to be more aggressive in dealing with management, I guess?
They are affirming their willingness, their commitment to fight for their families, and not just for the dollars, but for that actual, you can have the world's highest paid pilots, but the world's most frustrated pilots. That's just not going to make for a good business plan, nor is it going to make for a place that people want to work. So yes, we've seen a change. In our survey coming into this contract, we survey our pilots frequently. And of course, compensation is going to be in there. But when you take the aggregate of two areas we measured, work-life balance and scheduling practices. Work-life balance is your monthly schedule, your ability to move that around, and scheduling practices while you're out on the line and them changing your schedule. When you take those two together, they became number one. That is a demographics change, and it's a good change, and it's one that has been exacerbated by management post-pandemic coming in and raising the pressure up on that work-life balance by scheduling us in these irrational trips, these 4 and 5 day trips. They've had to overstaff the airline because it's crumbling under their desire to go grab that revenue. The CEO of Delta confessed on CNBC, and it was the righteous one. I don't mean that as a pejorative. He said, what happened was it was a desert of revenue during the pandemic, and then in this recovery, we saw it out there and we just went to get it and we overdid it. You sure did.
It's happening all across the board in a lot of places.
Yeah.
Dennis Tajer, when will we know, with all that's involved in the Railway Labor Act, walk us out, give us a potential timeline of what could happen going forward.
It's a great question, and it's the right question to ask. A strike authorization vote is a part of the process. Being in negotiations for the last 4 years is certainly initiation of that. This is the next step. It requires Railway Labor Act, in order to protect interstate commerce, requires a process that is overseen by the federal government. So the NMB gets involved. There's negotiations overseen by them. We're not at that point. We're hoping to get a deal through our own resources here. But they would have to go through that. They would have to declare an impasse. There would be a 30-day cooling off. So some have said, well, is the strike going to happen next week? No, it isn't. It's a process, but it's affirmation that that process has begun. Here's the worst case scenario. Nothing changes at American Airlines, and the last 2 summers that were horrid are only capped by one that's even worse. Doing nothing. The strike is got a lot of media attention, rightfully so, but the real issue is we're in May. We're just talking about the Memorial Day travel season. And here's something interesting. Just learned this yesterday. During the summer, last summer, we had an IT issue, and our president of our union and the CEO of American Airlines, the one in charge now, had a conversation over a weekend. I know because I was on duty on the 4th of July weekend on this topic. They basically came to an agreement to resolve this IT problem. They were going to test overtime flying on the holidays, pre-plotted, so a family could plan a month ahead of time. Hey, I can work on that holiday or the critical day around there. Thanksgiving and Christmas was a raving success because of that. We wanted this to go throughout the whole year. Labor Relations said, no, we're just going to try a sample of this. Here we are coming up on the summer. Our CEO didn't even know that we did not have those provisions enacted as we come into the summer. That was stunning to us. Now, we have it in our proposal, but man, oh man, if you don't know what saved you through the Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays can save you in the summer and you don't have it, you're walking out in that bright sun with no sunscreen and no hat on. They're going to get burned.
Well, I'm glad that guy's not flying my plane. I can tell you that right now.
But it kind of shows you, corporations are big. We're empathetic. We know. I mean, they're not. There's other labor groups. Our flight attendants are fighting for a contract. The CWA is in a process of a contract negotiation. I don't expect the CEO to be in tune with every detail, but I sure as heck expect them to know when their enterprise is at risk for performance. And the answer is sitting across the desk from us.
Yep. Dennis Tajer, the Communications Committee Chair Captain for Allied Pilots Association. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it. We'll be following this. Hopefully it'll be resolved quickly, but if not, I guess it'll be over the next several months. Thanks so much, Dennis.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.